Hi, I'm Stephany Smallwood. I'm an associate professor of history here at the University of Washington, and we're here today for a teach-in on Black Lives Matter, the urgency of racial justice activism in our time. And, the goal of the teach-in is just to have us come together as a community, members of the university, members of the wider Seattle community, students, faculty, organizers around the region to really just talk about what's going on in terms of racial justice in the U.S. today and the aftermath of the ongoing relentless killings of unarmed African Americans by police and armed citizens, the prison-industrial complex, the continued racial disparities that shape our country. And we're really foregrounding activism today because we really want to make this a day to really have us all think about what it means to be proactive on behalf of the safety and protection of Black life in America.
The Center for Communication, Difference and Equity, the CCDE, is so proud to be hosting our second annual teach-in. So we have 3 different moves here today. The first one is a roundtable. The second one is a conversation with activists and dialogue. And the third one is a call to action.
A teach-in. What does it mean when we say we're having a teach-in? It means we're in a learning space, but we're not in a traditional classroom, right? This is not a space that's about the hierarchies of, someone's a professor who has all the authority and information, and there's students who are supposed to sit and receive wisdom. This is about a collective learning space. It's very much about us coming together as faculty, as students, as staff, other members of the university, as members of the region and the city at large, as activists from various organizations, to all value the idea that we all have something to learn from each other, that every one of us has something to offer and something to learn and to take away.
Do you see the boy in the corner? Yeah, you know him. The one with the prettiest blue eyes. Do you see how he carries well-intentioned honesty like a badge? How entitlement wears his shoulders like a mantle and privilege holds his hand? Do you see how he speaks to the class like royalty, looks at me like target practice, fires off, Nikkita, when you say Black Lives Matter, you make me feel like you're calling me racist, like you're saying I did something wrong. You make me feel like he trails off with hesitation.
Activist scholarship, I think, is what a lot of us who've been involved in the teach-in do. And the teach-in is very much a collective of faculty. It is a faculty-driven effort. Faculty from across various departments, from across all 3 campuses, the Seattle campus, the Bothell campus, the Tacoma campus. And for many of us were activists when we were young folks, when we were students. Many of us do continue to feel that our scholarship is our activism today. And I think many of us, though, are feeling that, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm feeling like we're in a moment of real crisis right now, and I feel a call to do even more activism. I actually feel a call that it's not enough to say that teaching the history of slavery is my activism. What we're saying about today is that we hope everyone walks away with a sense of either renewed commitment or renewed investment in thinking seriously about what it means to proactively protect Black life. And that's a call for me too. I mean, I'm going to walk out of here also thinking about, so what else can I do? Can I do something to be involved in the University Behind Bars program, for example? Scholarship and activism, for many of us, they do go hand in hand. And I think that's a lot of what today is about for us.
So for me, activism matters because that is the only way that I will ever... Ooh.
I turned it off.
Thank you.
Because it was making noise.
It's the only way that I will ever be free, that my people will ever be free. So that's why it matters. And I really want to talk about the ways in which the role and representation of Black women oftentimes is erased from the movement and the conversation about Black Lives Matter.
If we base our analysis on purely economic principles, then what we get rid of, what we miss, are the very real social factors and degradations that occur as direct results of our actions. People's lives hang in the balance We are human beings. We are not externalities. And if we don't fight and interrupt and shut down those types of conversations and show that human beings are being impacted, disparaged, marginalized, silenced, and murdered, then their lives will not have any meaning in those spaces. And that is why we jump up, and that is why we must continue to change the narrative.
My work is in math education. I teach teachers how to teach mathematics. And math education is a racialized and gendered experience. And as my collaborator Danny Martin has said, it is actually for black children in this country, it is a violent experience. And you might ask, well, how can math be violent? And this is primarily because mathematics is used as the primary tool to rank and sort students by perceived intellect. And that intellect is connected to standardized tests and IQ. And I see a lot of nodding like, yeah. And we continue to do it, right? So these tests are culturally biased and they're grounded in the racist legacy of eugenics. And math is the primary gatekeeper to education. You stop taking math, the sound you hear are doors closing.
And so I really do encourage everybody to hold this president accountable, and I really mean hold this president accountable and push for these demands that were brought up last year, push for accountability in these meetings, because the problem is much more than interpersonal, it's also systemic. So when these teachers sit in these classes, I mean, I was just in a class last week that I dropped where a professor said Africans are genetically predisposed to being inferior, unlike other races, unlike other people such as Germans and Russians. And then I looked around the class like, did anybody catch that? And I was the only black student, and I ended up confronting the professor and dropping the class. We had an incident last year where a professor was asked to stop using the N-word in class by multiple people of color, and she refused. And it wasn't until that issue was pushed up to the dean that she apologized. And these are microaggressions that we deal with every single day. And they continue to occur because the problem is systemic. So when we look at racial bias in classrooms, we also have to look at how is the system itself perpetuating these microaggressions. How are we ourselves, how is this school itself contributing to these microaggressions? We talk about the Race and Equity Initiative in a time where the UW is still buying class 2 prison type labor, and benefiting off the marginalization of black and brown folks. So you have to be able to recognize this. It's really important to educate yourself. You have to see where it's coming from, but really, really, really you have to push for it.
One thing that I wanted to touch on the topic of language is the complete removal of racialized language in the institution, specifically college institutions, because I'm here. I'm taking an LSJ class right now, and just sitting in the class is extremely frustrating because we're having these conversations about what is violence and why is law violent, and how does the state perpetuate violence. But there's this complete we just completely ignore the fact that race matters. So we talk about these things as if it's not real life. And as a black woman, I know these things are real life. I know that the experiences that I've had, the experiences that other black students have had, other black women, black men I've had are real. And so to sit in these classes and listen to people talk about these experiences or these scenarios as if black people aren't being murdered by the police, as if state violence is only restricted to police brutality and it doesn't go further to the state stripping away black children from their parents, criminalizing the black poor, even the whole Flint situation, the fact that that can happen. And even you see the reaction of people is this lack of empathy, as if somehow it's their fault for their water being poisoned with lead. And so I just feel like when we have these discussions about race and racism and we take them into the institution, everyone wants to be colorblind. Everyone wants to act as if they've never heard about racism or they've never done anything racist. And so it's just really frustrating. So when it comes to activism, I feel like I'm obligated and I'm doing a disservice to myself if I'm not speaking up in these classes and if I'm not incorporating race because I'm black.
These are students and community members and faculty talking about race, equity, and justice in really specific and honest terms. We've created a space where the classroom and the campus and the community have really come together in this real honest and straightforward dialogue, and the kind of dialogue that as a community member, as a dean, as a citizen, as an African American man, the kind of conversation that I want to be in. And we've leveled the playing field so that people are talking to each other as citizens of a campus and citizens of a community, talking really about things that we should be talking about now, critical issues in our community that matter.
So a little bit about the work that I do. I'm a student trying to be in the society. I always tell people I'm not even supposed to be in the university because undocumented people are literally banned from so many universities around the country. And we have to recognize that even the way that universities are meant to be, universities are meant to uphold white supremacy. We are in colonized institutions. So it's really about what work are we doing to decolonize those institutions and constantly just really transform this institution. So a lot of my work has been focusing on that lately, specifically through an undocumented lens.
When you talk about the conditions of our struggle, one of the things I've been musing about recently is how white supremacy must diminish, must and will diminish. And that is, of course, to create a more fair society, more just society, a more level playing field so that this country can live up to everything that it says that it is and says that it's supposed to be.
I think the conditions that we're living in are more obvious to some of us than others. And I find that to be a part of the challenge of doing the work that I do. I spend a lot of time in coalition building and grassroots organizing. I believe wholeheartedly that the solutions to the problems that we face live in the communities most deeply impacted, and that the medicine to the problems we're dealing with need to come from the voices of those who we call marginalized. Though I don't think those folks are actually marginalized, they're the center of our system, they're who our system is built upon. So when we talk about marginalization, I think we actually need to flip our paradigm and start acknowledging that we've actually built our entire system upon and around folks that we call disenfranchised. And that's how capitalism and oppression continue to persist.
The organization I currently work for, we create alternatives to media. So if we know the narrative about Black folks and their lives here in this country, it's not a positive narrative, right? It's what Nikkita was talking about. It needs to be reversed entirely on its head. We need to recognize power instead of marginalization and death. And so for me to show up for Black Lives Matter is to honor death first and believe people and honor the suffering that's happening. So for me, part of activism is honoring the dead and dying, is showing up for where there's wound and trauma first. And then it's asking critical questions about how do I bring voice where there isn't as a non-Black mixed woman of color.
Shockwave, dynamic transistor disposition. My configuration is that audio-visual compilation. My conjunction is that fork in the road sensation, forming a transformation in my obligation to my survival's distillation. Oh, how bland is each part of H2O alone, but together they form a constellation. The twins, simultaneous universal stipulations, which keep my psyche focused on those drastic presentations before me, leaving no time for hesitations as the ground is vanishing from beneath my feet in revelations.
You know, I'm gonna close by saying I hesitate around saying, some kind of see you next year, because one of the things that's on my mind about this teach-in is that this teach-in happened last year as a reaction, a grief reaction to the non-indictment of Darren Wilson. Black Lives Matter was coined as a phrase, in trauma, in a reaction to the murder of Trayvon Martin. Nikkita, the point you made about how do we make sure we're not making a living off of injustice. One of the representatives of Youth Undoing Institutionalized Racism I heard speak at they got an award from the Human Rights Council a couple of weeks ago, and took the award but got up and said, because the award ceremony was titled Black Lives Matter, right? That was the theme for this year, and kind of said, what are you doing making Black Lives Matter a theme? Like, Black Lives Matter is about a crisis. Don't thematize a crisis. So I'm not comfortable thematizing this teach-in. It makes me sad that there's a strong likelihood that a year from now we will still feel a sense of urgency, a sense that there is a need. I'm saddened that I don't see an end to the killings on the horizon. I don't see an end to the prison industrial complex in the next 12 months. But I'm hopeful that we will be moving in the right direction. So I don't know what a conversation is going to be like next year, and but so I don't want to necessarily say like, come back next year for the annual. I'm not going to go there because that's problematic for me. But let's go forth. Let's recommit ourselves because it is. One of the quotes I had up on that slideshow is that it's the ordinary people, right? It's us ordinary people who make change. So thank you. Is Sister Row anyone over at the front desk? I think they would like us to help them straighten up the room as we head out by stacking the chairs, if we could do that.